Hello, everyone. It's Carl again, and today I'll be talking about Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. Now, this game was developed by Koei Tecmo Games and published by Nintendo for the Switch on May 18th, 2018. It'll run you $59.99 US dollars and was rated T for fantasy violence and suggestive themes. It's a mashup of gameplay from Koei Tecmo's Warriors series and the characters and locations from Nintendo's The Legend of Zelda series. And this particular port is a combination of all the content you could find in the original Wii U version, the enhanced Legends edition for the 3DS, as well as all the DLC in those two games, with a little bit extra added on, all on one cartridge. In this game, it follows a Zelda storyline completely separate from the main canon, in which an evil sorceress, in a bid to take over Hyrule, summons a bunch of monsters from a bunch of different time periods and areas, which conveniently are the same time periods and areas that other Legend of Zelda games take place. So all these different characters from different Zelda games get connected up, and they have to band together to overthrow or thwart the sorceress's attempts at taking over Hyrule. My personal anticipation going into this game. My first interaction with the original Hyrule Warriors for Wii U was a demo stand at a Best Buy. And I picked up the game, and the only thing you could play, like, the first part of the first scenario, and you could use either the sword and shield or the fire rod. And I started mowing down, scores of enemies, and I was like, oh my god, this game is great. I got it for Christmas, I believe, that same year. Played the crap out of it, loved it. And then later, when the definitive edition came out on Switch, especially since I never picked up Legends, I decided this would be a great way to replay the game, re-experience it, and see what I missed when I didn't play Legends. So yeah, with that, I'll dive right into the game. Sorry for the little spoiler for how I feel about the game. I do love it, so get ready for lots of gushing throughout this review. In any case, the gameplay, the main combat, I've never played a Warriors game before, but from what I understand, it's the same as that. Your there's the main combat where you're hacking and slashing tons of enemies. There's in between battles where you're prepping and leveling up warriors, and then there's an adventure mode, which is in this game, which I'll touch on after I talk about the main gameplay. So, this game is a hack and slash game. Is it ever? It is your character in the middle of an army, just dozens, hundreds upon hundreds of enemies coming at you, and it is your job to carve through them, capture keeps, to start producing soldiers for your army. Eventually, overwhelm their army, usually defeat their commander, and then win the map. Now, the vast majority of enemies, unlike normal Zelda games, can be taken down in one hit. In a normal Zelda game, usually you have to take some time with each individual enemy to take them out. In this game, if you're any sort of leveled up enough, if you press the Y button, you'll swing your sword or you'll do your attack, and it will pass clean through a dozen enemies and knock them all out. Boom, one swing. And that's really what this game is all about. It's all about the mindless fun of just tearing through an entire army, right? I believe on the Wii U version, the tagline was "You against an army." This one it just says "Stand against the enemies of Hyrule," which I think is kind of lame, but whatever. It's all about the mindless fun of just mashing the button and taking people out, right? It involves felling hordes of enemies with one blow, but it does like have the strategy of trying to take keeps, make sure that the enemy forces don't retake the keeps that you've taken with their forces. You can have multiple characters on the map at the same time, so you can direct them to certain objectives, to do certain things, all that sort of stuff. But the main thing is that the hack and slash gameplay. the the main gameplay, though, being the hack and slash, is a tad on the mindless side. It's like involves spamming the Y button and then maybe pressing X somewhere in there to like finish a combo and use a certain move. But for the most part, you're just trying to take down enemies and optimize the amount of enemies you take down so you can charge up your special attacks to take down more enemies so that you can take the keeps so that you can progress the objectives of the map, whatever those are, defeat the boss, take the keeps, um, do whatever, and then your end goal is usually to have your army and you defeat the commander, right? And while it is mindless, it is truly fun. This could be just due to the nostalgia and the ability to play as like Zelda characters. But they really do nail the sense of like power that you get from just ripping through an entire rank of enemies. Everything they have in the game is designed to try to like funnel into this ability of just being unstoppable. They have like a KO counter in the bottom, and it'll tell you how many you KO'd in like a special attack, and it'll just like wreck once you hit certain like 100 KOs, 500 KOs, whatever. It'll show up on screen, and it'll tell you like, oh, Link just hit 500 KOs. The sound design is meant to sound really satisfying when each time you hit an enemy, it just goes wow wow wow. The visuals are also in service of taking out enemy after enemy. Each time you hit one, it makes like a slash mark, or like they'll have fireballs spewing everywhere. Everything in this game is meant to kind of like tap into that mindless, basic power instinct of just feeling unstoppable. Um, it, but while it is great at making you feel on top of the world, I do have a few complaints about the gameplay. Um, there isn't a whole lot of strategy in terms of like actually fighting enemies. It's just kind of you rip through enemies and then try to capture keeps. Um, there are enemies that like can't be felled in one blow and actually have high HP. It's not really like your skill level doesn't really matter all that much as long as you're good at dodging and taking these enemies out. It's more just how high your level is in terms of how quickly, because you just need to chip away and away and away at their HP. Sometimes you do get to do a weak point smash, which allows you to perform a stronger attack for more damage. But for the most part, the strategy, the fun of the game is slashing through enemies. The dumb fun is, and the smart fun is about managing where your characters are going and what keeps you want to take when, and making sure that enemy captains can't get into your territory and take it over. And it is kind of sad that there's not a lot of skill involved once you hit a certain point and you're good at dodging enemy attacks, and it's more of just kind of the strategy of moving your characters where they need to be, which is a little boring because you have to, if you want to tell someone to go somewhere else, you have to pause, like bring up the menu, click on their character, and click on where you want them to go, and then have them go there. So it is like it doesn't take too long, so it doesn't mess up the flow of battle too much, but still, it's kind of like, okay, well, it's kind of jarring to cut up the action itself. It doesn't kill it too much, but it is worth mentioning. Um, that's like it for the main gameplay. In between fights, you do like manage your characters. You can prepare and level up the characters between fights. You get to choose what weapons you want them to use. You can spend money to level characters up in like the training area. You can use materials that enemies drop to like power up your warriors, give them more special gauges, give them a potion, all that fun stuff. It's like kind of just your standard in between prepare for the next battle type deal. And the actually, interestingly enough, aside from the story mode, the majority of the content in the game is actually in adventure mode, right? And let me tell you, this thing is a stroke of genius, right? So the first adventure mode maps, they add more later, includes a grid that is based off of the original The Legend of Zelda game. And I don't know if you've ever played the original before, you know what it is, but basically what it is each screen, like the screen will be stationary and you move around top down, and then once you move off a screen, the entire camera will pan up to that screen, and then you'll move around like that. So the entire overworld map is essentially a grid. And so what they did was they made every single grid a new battle for you to do. Every single rectangle on this grid is a new battle for you to do. And in order to unlock certain rewards, you have to use secrets from the original game. And what I mean by that is in the original Zelda game, right, there were random walls that if you dropped a bomb on them, it would blow a hole open and it would make a cave. There were random trees that if you burned them down with a candle, it would light them on fire and reveal a staircase. There were lakes where if you play the flute, it would dry up and reveal a dungeon. So there were all these secrets in the original game, and in the adventure mode of Hyrule Warriors, what they did was if you win a battle, you'll get an item card, like a bomb or a candle or something like that, and you can use those items, uh, for example, a bomb, on a certain space on the grid to unlock a new reward. And the trick is you have to choose which space on the grid you want to place the bomb. And if you don't place the bomb correctly, it'll blow up, you'll lose your bomb, and you won't get anything. Now, you can use a compass item, and that'll tell you where to use the bomb specifically. Or you can open up the original game, which is what I did in my 3DS. You can open up the original game, find out in that game where the secret bombable wall is, and that will coincide perfectly with where the bombable wall is in game on Hyrule Warriors. I don't know if I explained that correctly. That's kind of an abstract. You need to see it to really understand. But essentially, what the game does is if you have access to the original Legend of Zelda and you can or if you have a memory of the game and you know where to bomb the walls and where to burn the trees down, you have a distinct advantage in this specific game mode. And I think that's brilliant. If you really want to, you can just look up everything. But I think it's brilliant that it makes this connection to the original game. And there's some things I remember, like, okay, this tree has this dungeon underneath it, so I know to burn it down. Stuff like I just think it's just an absolutely lovely way to incorporate the original, like a nod to the original Legend of Zelda that started all way back to 1985. It might be just being completely nerding out about it because I played that game when I was younger. But I love adventure mode. Not to mention, there's so much to do in adventure mode. It's there's so many fights. You won't beat everything, unless you're absolutely super dedicated. I will say though, the one thing that I think is a pain about adventure mode is some battles require you to use certain warriors, either to just win, like you can't play unless you use that warrior, or you need to use a certain warrior to get unlock a reward for that warrior, and it is a pain to keep everybody leveled up. You tend to want to settle on a main and use them all the time. I always wanted to use Link all the time. My brother always wanted to use Ganondorf, but it was like, okay, well, you have to play Tingle for this map or whatever. And this kind of segues into the point I want to make about two-player. You can do two-player, which is great, but it's basically like better than one player in every sense of the word. Like the only bad thing I can think of on Definitive Edition is that because there's no Wii U gamepad, you know, there's you have to do split screen on the Wii U. You could do one person on the TV, one person on the gamepad. But with the Switch edition, you have to do split screen. But other than that, it's just having two people. Like, yeah, you can do one person switching between multiple people, but like that's still one person. It's not two people at the same time. So two people like there was a point where I was stuck because I was playing with my brother, and using like I would pick whatever low level character that I was required to play as, and then he would pick Ganondorf, who was like one of the highest level characters we had, and then I would just kind of like walk around and pick off random weak enemies because I was too weak to fight the big ones, and he would just play the map instead. So I did get kind of stuck there when, I move off to college and I'm not with him anymore and I have to do everything one player, and now all the characters are under-leveled. So do keep that in mind. It's kind of weird how they implement two-player, but they don't seem to have any nerf to it to playing the two player. The only thing that I noticed was different about two player is that um maybe like less enemies spawned, so it's harder to rack up KOs, so it's harder to get your special gauge to fill up. But I don't know if that was an intended effect or just like the game trying to conserve RAM. I have no idea. I'm no developer. Anyway, that's enough on the gameplay. On to the story, right? So before I begin, like I said before, this is not canon to the overall Zelda timeline. It can't be, like, it just physically cannot take place anytime. So sorry for any fans that were hoping I would explain this and how it fits in. It does not. But in any case, the story starts out. There's this sorceress who is tasked with watching over um, a sealed Ganon. He's got four. In a prior era, he was beaten and sealed, and his spirit was broken into four different fragments and spread all across space and time, and sealed in different places. Conveniently, there's one sealed in the Hyrule Warriors universe. There's one sealed in the Ocarina of Time universe. There's one sealed in the Twilight Princess universe, and there's one sealed in the Skyward Sword universe. So you have this sorceress whose job it is to watch over um, Ganon. And one time when she's vulnerable, he strikes out from his seal and kind of like uh, purges the goodness from her heart, if you will, and makes her evil essentially. So she goes crazy, and instead of wanting to help people and like be passive and just make sure the seal on Ganon is staying unbroken, she goes crazy and she says, "You know what? I want to take over Hyrule." So she opens up portals to all of Ganon's different fragments in an effort to like summon monsters and take over Hyrule. So that's what the story is. Essentially, that's the conflict, and it starts out when Zelda and Impa kind of, I guess, have wised up. Finally, the previous generation has told them that, by the way, whenever something bad happens with Ganon involved, some blonde dude named Link will show up and help save the day. So they look for who might be the hero of time. They find Link, and they all band together, various blah 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 convoluted story. They recruit people from all the different games I mentioned, and they go try to take on the sorceress. And I'll leave it at that. I don't think it's a huge spoiler like story that would be bad if I spoiled it, but play the game if you really want to experience it in full. There's a fair amount of twists and turns and different facets to the story. So I'll leave it there. Um, Overall, my critique of the story, it's not awesome. Like, it's not. I wasn't riveted to the spot. I wasn't too emotionally affected by it. It's really just a more or less, I don't want to say lame excuse, but it kind of is a lame excuse. It's a framework to to get all these different characters together. It's just an excuse so that I can not only play as Link, but I can play as Darunia the Goron from Ocarina of Time, or Fi from Skyward Sword, or Midna from Twilight Princess. It's just an excuse to be able to bring all these different characters, so that the little Zelda fanboy in me can, jump up and down and clap his hands because, oh my god, I can play as Midna or whatever, right? So you've got this nice setup. I love the fact that it brings everyone together. I don't really care that it's not a deep story that stands on its own. So I'm going to get to the crux of this review here. This is one of the biggest things that I want to talk about of why I like Hyrule Warriors so much, right? If you've seen my review of Fire Emblem Warriors, I can link that in the description below. You know that I really don't like that game. So here I am saying I hate the Fire Emblem mashup, but I love the Hyrule Warriors, the Legend of Zelda mashup. And why is that? It's not that I love Legend of Zelda so much more than Fire Emblem. I really like Fire Emblem as a series too. Uh, but the 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 crux of the matter, I think, is the representation um, of how and the presentation of how each game's content was molded into a Warriors game. I don't want to talk too much about Fire Emblem because I said what I wanted to say there, but to give a quick example, like with a typical Fire Emblem game, you have an army of like 50 different characters that you get to know and you can control, and like dozens and dozens of weapons in each weapon type to choose from. In Fire Emblem Warriors, right, you have like 20 some odd characters spanning an entire series. So you have less characters than one Fire Emblem game. And if your character might have a special weapon unique to them, that's cool, sure. But other than that, they don't really have much in the way of special weapons to equip. So with Fire Emblem Heroes, it's kind of this step back of you don't get to play as as many characters. You don't get to play with as many weapons. So it's kind of like this underwhelming downgrade, right? But with Hyrule Warriors, one, the cool thing about the Legend of Zelda series is that while all the different games, take place in different eras with different characters, you still have someone named Link. You still have someone named Zelda. You usually have someone named Impa, right? So you can create this Hyrule Warriors main hub world, if you will, and the main character is Link from Hyrule Warriors, and he's supported by Zelda and Impa from Hyrule Warriors. And there are lots of characters in the Zelda franchise who are specific to their game, right? Ocarina of Time, you get Darunia and Ruto. Those aren't characters really in other games. In Twilight Princess, you have Midna. She doesn't appear anywhere else. In Skyward Sword, you have Fi, who never appears in any other game. So you have like this these recurring characters that you can kind of start your game off of. You don't have to make up another character to be the main character, because in Fire Emblem, you can't pick any one series or game to have be the main character, so they had to make up some. This one, no, you get to play as Link, the main character of the series as a whole. Um, and also something that's really cool about the game is for a lot of these characters, like this is the first time and really the only time that they've ever been playable. In the Zelda franchise, you pretty much solely play as Link, which there's nothing wrong with that for consistency. But it's just that sometimes you have characters that you like, that you run into, that you're like, wow, I really wish I had a game in which I could play as that character. And in this game, you get to. So while Fire Emblem Warriors feels like such a step down, like of limiting your ability to play as these characters and with these different weapons, with Hyrule Warriors, all of a sudden you've got all these characters that you've never played as before that you get to play as. And with the weapons, like in the Zelda series, the primary weapon is a sword and shield. That's the one you do damage with. You get a bunch of other cool items, but they're really, more often than not, they're less intended to be something that you fight with, and more intended to be something that you solve puzzles with. Like, you don't go through the game only using your bow and arrow to fight enemies, because you'll run out of arrows, because that's not how the game is made. That's not how it's designed. But if you have cool weapons like the golden gauntlets, or the ball and chain, or the spinner, even from Twilight Princess. All of those, or you got the fire rod from the original game, or a lot of the games have a fire rod. All of these weapons are ones that Link can use as his main weapon, right? So you have all these great weapons in the game that don't really get a chance to shine, but in Hyrule Warriors, you do. Like, you can ride on freaking horseback. It does, the game does such a good job of saying, you want to play as this, you want to do this, why not? You know, you want to freaking play through the entire game as Princess Ruto? Sure, go for it, right? And in this way, this game feels like such a love letter to the Legend of Zelda franchise, even though it's not a Zelda, like, mainline Zelda game. Everything that they can connect to a Zelda game or something Zelda related, they will. Right? You play as Rito, Princess Rito the Zora. She attacks. Her weapon is called a scale. Her level in 1 and 2 weapon are the silver and gold scales that you can get in Ocarina of Time. Granted, in those games they help you dive lower, but in this game, why not? It's a weapon. And the level 3 weapon is the dragon scale from Skyward Sword. Anything that they can, like, try to shove in, they will. Right? Impa uses a great sword. Well, Bigoron sword. She uses that, right? and and that's really the crux of what I love about this game. It just, you can tell how much effort and thought was put into trying to connect this game to the Zelda franchise in every way possible. Um, like I already mentioned adventure mode and how it utilizes the original game so heavily, but it's Mwah! I love it. I love it so much. Uh, if you're a Zelda fan, you'll love this game. You will. I pretty much guarantee it. Right. All right. Enough of me gushing about references that I like. On to the graphics and art style. I don't have much to say here, given like the mashup nature. It borrows a lot from other Zelda games. Um, it is kind of cool to, like, you go to Skyward Sword and it kind of looks like everything's um like a painting, like it does in Skyward Sword. You see like Bokoblins from Skyward Sword, Stalfoses from Ocarina of Time, stuff like that. Different art styles of all the different games are they do a pretty good job of bringing them all together and making them feel cohesive, and not like it's just some hodgepodge of a bunch of different art styles thrown together. So I can't complain about it. It does what it does the job, right? Music. Usually I don't have a lot to say about music, but I do have a bit here. I actually really like the music in this game and what they did with it. A good deal of the tracks in this game are like electric guitar remixes of previous games' music. The first one that comes to mind is actually Skyloft's theme. And if you played Skyward Sword, you know that Skyloft is like the first area you come to. It's like home base. You have the bazaar there where you can buy stuff. Like, really, it never gets attacked. Like, it's this nice, peaceful place. And to go along with it, it has this nice, peaceful theme. But in Hyrule Warriors, they take Skyloft and it's the site of a battle, right? And so you can't have this, like, do 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 theme going on during a battle. So they up the tempo, they give it like an underlying beat, and then they replace the main instruments with electric guitar, you know. So you've got this like nice, lovely, simple theme transformed into battle music, and I think they actually do a really good job, because it kind of splits the difference of, okay, the tone from the original game is not there, obviously, because you're slaughtering bokoblins instead of talking to your friends, but the underlying music is still there, and I think they really did a good job of taking the initial music and adapting it to this game. It's quite amazing in my opinion, right? Finally, I want to talk about DLC. There is no DLC in this game, except there kind of is. And what I mean by that is, if you were paying attention to the start, this is not only a mashup of, or a combination of Hyrule Warriors for the Wii U and Hyrule Warriors Legends for the 3DS. It also includes every single piece of DLC that those games had. So you get like the Wind Waker storyline from Legends, but you also get, an adventure map, multiple other adventure mode maps, and I really appreciate with how like dedicated the developers were with giving you just more content, right? They basically tried to make everything available that like you would ever ask for. It's, do you want to play? You see these non-player bad guy characters throughout the story. You want to play as them? Sure, go ahead. In the Master Quest map, you can get their higher level items. Uh, if you do you want extra adventure modes based off of the maps of Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess? Sure. Do you want to play as Yuga or Ravio from A Link Between Worlds, or what's her face, Marin from A Link to the no, what's it, Link's Awakening? Go ahead. Like it, they just give you so much content, which, I mean, it's an easy game to remix and just give you more battles. I'm glad that they did. There's probably more content here, realistically, than you will literally be able to finish. Like, I think you would have to put like hundreds upon hundreds of hours in order to finish the game. But like, I didn't need to finish it 100%. I got a pretty decent chunk done, and I felt really satisfied with the content that was given me. Yeah, I mean, overall, Hyrule Warriors is like a match made in heaven. I absolutely love how well they managed to make the Warriors gameplay match up and mesh with the Legend of Zelda references and characters and areas and items. Oh my God, I love it so much. It's the greatest. I mean, I keep using the word love letter, right? But I really think it is. It's the greatest love letter to the Zelda franchise that has ever been made. And just the sheer attention to detail on trying to fit as much Zelda as possible within these games it's really commendable. Both in the game mechanics and the Zelda items. Of course, being a Zelda fan, it obviously helped my enjoyment because I was grinning ear from ear whenever I saw, oh, that's this is that weapon is a reference to this. This music is actually that one but remixed. Oh my God, I can play as this character, right? But honestly, with how solid and satisfying the hack and slash gameplay is, I would recommend this game to non-Zelda fans as well in a heartbeat, right? So, given that this is a game that I think everyone will have a great time playing, I'm gonna give it a solid 9 out of 10. I am. I think this game is amazing. I absolutely adore it. It is one of my favorites on the Switch, and as such, I absolutely recommend you pick it up, no matter who you are. So yeah, that concludes my gushing stellar recommendation of Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you're not a Zelda fan and you played this game and did enjoy it, tell me why. If the references and whatnot was like too much for you, I'd love to know. I read all my comments. If there's anything you saw that you agreed or disagreed with, feel free to drop it down below. Other than that, I have links to my social media in the description if you like this content. But yeah, Have a nice day, everybody. Pick up a copy and go while away the quarantine. Bye.